Okay, data models. What is a data model? Think of a data model as your own personal database. Why is that important? Well, let's even take a step back further. If you're going to be analyzing data, then you're going to need data. That's redundant, but when you're opening your Power Pivot workbook, you're going to need to connect to whichever source or sources of the data are, whether those exist in SharePoint, Access, a CSV file, SQL Server, Analysis Services, OData. Any of those can be merged together to give you your data model. In other words, think of it as you're creating your own little personal database that will be stored within your workbook. So why is that important? Well, if you don't connect to those sources, you won't be able to crunch the data. You will not be able to analyze it. That is why it is of key importance for you to be able to connect to those data sources in order to create your own personal database. So there are a couple of types that are usually thought of. And while this is not set in stone, or you probably won't hear it really much out there, there's what are considered two of these data models, the physical and the logical. Your physical usually is created by professionals, data professionals. And your logical is the one you end up creating, how you analyze your data on your own. We will see furthermore how this really ties together to help you with your workbook itself. Your physical data model. As mentioned before, it is usually created by data professionals. These could be your DBAs, data architects, or data scientists in your company. It is very much out of the box created for you, so you don't have to worry about it. In fact, you're just going to be leveraging it throughout whenever the process of importing your data. An example is the follows. Take a look at what we're looking at the screen. This is just out of the box imported data from the Northwind Access database. Notice that we have far right order detail status, far left orders, and somewhere in the middle in blue order details. Not to forget about products either. The order details is the center of your attention here. Why? Because this is where all your transactions, most of them happen. All the order details occur here, and they are being looked upon. Products, upon your orders, which is the header of the table, and your status. This is a physical model that is already out of the box created for you. No need to make any changes to it. And that is where your physical comes into play. Now, a logical one is going to be utilized by end users, or power users more in this case, as you are. Why? Because it is the one that you're going to end up creating throughout your process of analyzing, gathering your data, how it is easier to interact with the data and organize it. Let's take a look at an example to clarify this better. Notice what happens here. There's a little bit difference against the previous one. What happened is there was branches added into the equation. Why? Well, your company is multi-company in this case, which Northwind takes care of, and they have decided to branch worldwide. Unfortunately, their data did not have that included. So branches was added through a CSV file in order to make it easier to identify where the orders were made from. That would be the difference between your physical one. Just as an example mentioned, for some reason there was not a possibility by the data professionals in the company at Northwind to create that manually, so they just gave you a CSV file, and this is the result of it. You were able to merge those different databases and data files into what you see on the screen. Your data connections, what are they? We mentioned them before and how they were being used within your data model. But we're going to look at them in more detail. A data connection is how you locate and connect to the data you will be using from. It is also, and can be, the possibility of multiple data connections at the same time, meaning that you're not restricted to one. So in this case, as an example, if you had a data coming from Access Database or SQL Server, and you were given by another power user some other files that really complemented this data, you can utilize them without any problem. You just have to think of how you're going to connect them, but that's all there is, how they're going to be related. That's the biggest key point to keep in mind. SQL Query Designer as a data modeling tool. If you're not familiar with SQL, this is just a complimentary additional footnote for you so that you can leverage it if you are not familiar with it. But if you are, really what it amounts to is that you can utilize T-SQL within your modeling tool when you're importing and creating your data connection. That's a mouthful there. Really, what it boils down to is you can use T-SQL if you are comfortable with it. If not, it is encouraged to look into it. It's not necessarily mandatory, but it can help you in the way in which you can merge your data from tables that are not already merged or compiled in a thoughtful way. What do I mean with that? We saw previously in the diagrams within your Northwind Access database that you have orders, order details, order status, order detail status, and products. Well, what if you wanted to compile the data that exists in all those tables into one single point of view? That's where T-SQL can come in handy. You could do it yourself, or you could ask for the help of your data professionals in your company, which chances are they already probably have a view or a sort of procedure that does that, in which you can leverage. That is the power of T-SQL at your disposal there. To clarify what we've been discussing about using T-SQL, we're going to go further and demo it for you. So what we're going to be doing in this demo for the SQL Query Designer is to show you how you can leverage the power of T-SQL within Power Pivot itself. Notice that we already have previously enabled Power Pivot add-in. We're going to be clicking on Manage, and we're now into Power Pivot. We're going to get external data. Now we have this other menu. We're going to click down on SQL Server. For the purposes of this demo, I'm referring to the same box, which, if you weren't aware, you can use just period, and that gives you a quick shortcut into your current box. I'm going to be using Northwind, and it's always a good thing to click on Test Connection to make sure you're on the right path. Now, notice that there are two choices here. Either select from the list tables and view them directly, or write a query. And this is what we were talking and referring to about using T-SQL. If I choose Write a Query and click Next button, we will be prompted to enter a query. I'm going to call it My Query. Not a very description, but it should be holding water for what we need. Notice what we're doing here. I'm going to explain furthermore. We're going to be retrieving the product ID, the category ID, product name, and category name from two tables, products and categories. We could have retrieved both of these tables by just clicking on them, but this is going to provide us one single logical object that compiles both of them. Going to validate it. It is a valid statement, and click Finish. Notice it retrieved 77 rows. We can close it, and it has done the work for us. it has created one single query named myQuery and compiled the data from both tables as one single table in a logical fashion. As mentioned before, logical data model, this is how it would be applied. We could also rename this as a good habit to my categories and products. And now when we navigate back by clicking on the top switch to workbook and insert a Power Pivot table, by clicking insert in pivot table, we'll use our external data connection that exists already by choosing it. Notice SQL Server Northwind. We open it. We're going to use a new worksheet just to not step on the current one. And notice the data that we created is now available for us. We can click on product name, and our category actually was meant to be used. Notice that it's grouped already for us in a logical sense for us to be able to analyze that data. SQL Server. Now, as part of our data connections in the data model, SQL Server is an integral part of it. Why? Because odds are that you're going to have some, if not a majority of the data in SQL Server, whether it's in an old version of SQL Server or a newer one. These versions could range from 7.0, 2005, 2008, 2008 R2, 2012, and 2014. Do you really have to worry about these? As long as they exist and they're properly updated, that should be the job of your data professionals. You should be fine. The idea of this topic of conversation is that you should keep these in mind in case you have to pull data from multiple of these or merge them together. There might be some differences between these versions if they all exist in the same company at the same time. Now, SQL Server also, on top of having a different version, can come in multiple flavors. Express, which usually supports up to 10 gigabytes or more. Express Advanced. Express Advanced is just goes on top of Express, allowing you to have SSRS and a few other additional functionality that is not supported in Express. Standard is a much higher and stronger flavor of SQL Server, leading into business intelligence and enterprise. Of course, if you go enterprise and your company allows and your DBAs too, that's the easiest way because it encompasses everything that you most likely will need within business intelligence or relational databases. That said, I'm going to move into a demo so that you can see how you can leverage the power of SQL Server into Power Pivot 2013. So we click on Excel to open it, and we're going to create a blank workbook. With Power Pivot already enabled, we're going to click on Power Pivot, Manage, and retrieve data. Notice that we have multiple sources. For the SQL Server, we just click on From Database, and you'll notice that it already provides us with SQL Server. We click on that, and I click period just to let it know that it's my local host, my current server. We'll have a list of databases that are readily available for us. In this case, I'm just going to refer to Northwind. I'm going to test my connection just in case. Click Next. And I'm going to select, in this case, a list of tables and views to choose for data to import. Click Next button and rearrange a little bit our screen so that we can check and see all that is available for us within Northwind. I will be interested in order details. If I click only one, it'll just choose that one, but it's best to choose Select Related Tables. Why? Because all that is related will be automatically populated for you and checked in these checkboxes. it already indicates that 2 related tables were selected, additionally to what we originally had chosen. We finish by clicking on the Finish button and click the Close button. Notice it completed, and it created 3 tabs within Power Pivot for us: Order Details, Orders, and Products. To view any of these, we just switch back to our workbook, click Insert, Pivot Table, use an external data connection that we have, and notice we only have currently SQL Server, which is correct. We open that in a new worksheet and click OK. We can choose from any of these tables that are available for us. While kludgy, there is a few tips and tricks here. Collapse All allows you to just view your tables there and allows you to easily select just what you'd like to see. In this case, I want to see the product name, and I want to see quantity and unit price. Notice the data comes readily available for us in our workbook. We navigate down and it's all there, summed and listed. Access. Now we're going to look into retrieving data from Access. A few things to keep in mind. As in SQL Server, there are multiple versions of Access, just as Office, and they match exactly because, after all, Access is part of that suite, ranging from 2000, 2003, 2007, 2010, and 2013, and prior to that there were other versions. But most importantly is the ability to move forward. The latest version will allow you to retrieve any backward versions, but not the other way around. So if you have 2007, you won't be able to open a 2013 version. These are the nuances that you should keep in mind whenever interacting with data that's going to be used and important from multiple versions. On the other hand, because using Access, it makes it really portable. Why? Because it's a single file that can be copied, pasted, and yes, it can grow, but it can be exchanged and shared among other Office users, which makes it very easily accessible and portable for all of those who are going to be sharing it in the end. That said, let's take a look and see how we can open Access and retrieve data into Power Pivot. Okay, let's start by opening Excel. Once more, we start with a blank workbook. We go into Power Pivot, manage our data model, and click Get External Data from Database. Notice that it's already listed for us from Access. We're going to browse for our Northwind file, which is readily available. And I'm going to test the connection. The connection has succeeded. We click Next, and we can choose our list of tables. I'm going to click Next and choose them accordingly. I'm interested in Order Details. I'm going to make sure that all the details and related tables are selected, which it has done for us, adding 3 additional tables that were selected: Products, Order Detail Status, and Orders. We click Finish. And once it's completed, we click Close. It's all been successful. Notice that they're named properly: Order Details, Order Detail Status, Orders, and Products. Let's switch back to the workbook. Click Insert and add a pivot table. Remember to choose our connection, which is Northwind, and open in a new worksheet. Notice that they are all added in here. Let's collapse them so it's easily readable. And choose our product name, the quantity, and the unit price. Notice that it's already listed there for us and summed.